Hi there, this is Mark. This is my second posting for Greenview. I'd just like to say first of all that I think it's really good that it's all up and running very successfully. I've had about 160 hits, which is really good. Some people have been following, and there have been a few posts up, and I've been getting some feedback as well, which is really good. So I'm going to come on to the feedback in a little bit, but just I'd like to say that I think it is it's doing what I wanted it to, and it's definitely working as a tool for expression. Just to pretty much spot on exactly what I wanted it to do. So which is good. I apologise about the last video. Been having some technical difficulties here at the Greenview studio that is my room, because we haven't been able to. Basically, it's coming out a little bit out of phase. Hopefully, this video will be less like a Chinese action film, and more like the stern, reasoned dialogue or monologue in this case that you'd expect. So I have been getting some feedback, so I'd like to address some of that now. So the first one that I got, which I really liked actually, which was that my friend John said that he'd like to see more Mark and less Markisms, which I think is a great comment. I think a lot of people, they just do this whenever they feel the need to get up on a soapbox or talk about something or express some sort of opinion. They revert to expressing some sort of formalised opinion on the issue, and it doesn't reveal a lot about their core character, except in the fact of the things they clash with. So it tends to be those things that pull apart the real person, rather than trying to get the core message of that's straight from you across. So I will endeavour, John, to be more me and less sort of Markism. But on a separate note, I got some other feedback that said it's very you. So which I also think is great. So obviously it was too much me for somebody and not enough for others. So probably means I'm doing my job about right. The other one that was, which I thought was interesting, is from some of my scientist colleagues, which said, you promised us all this Eastern, philosophy, these wider insights into our, into the science that I do as well, but I haven't seen it. All I see is a sort of, pretty left-wing blog about, the state of the world, really, and some politics and economics and stuff, and I think, yeah, you're pretty much right. So I will be will be desperately trying to boost up the amount of Eastern philosophy and stuff in there. So I will have a couple of sections that will be more devoted purely to some Taoist and Buddhist thought, rather than relating it so intimately to the green stuff. So I'd like to address that first of all. Now, in a sort of very broad sense, by thinking about worldview, because I really think there is a fundamental difference in the sort of classical Western worldview and the classical Eastern worldview. I think it is really important. I think it can be overstated like anything, but I think it's important to really make this clear. So you have to excuse my terrible diagrams, but because my artistic side comes out through my writing, not through my drawing. Let's make this clear. So we have the top one is some cogs, believe it or not, and then we have a yin yang down the bottom, the Taiji symbol. Yeah? So the cogs at the top, I think, really describe a lot to do with the sort of, pretty much since the sort of 17th, 18th century on, the Western worldview, which is the scientifically formed opinion, that the world is full of discrete, rational elements that fit together in an ordered pattern. If we dissect any one, we can work out what it does. It's a cog, there is something to be said about how they fit together, but, primarily if we pull apart each bit, the cog remains, as a useful unit to describe the world, So this is the sort of the atomic universe. Everything is separate and works together in an orderly pattern, and then you can stick God directing it if you want, or not, and it doesn't really affect the whole mythology that much actually. So it's still pretty much the same general approach. Then on the other hand, you have the Taiji symbol. So it doesn't really matter which way you look at it, which is always nice. Which is a completely different thing. It means grand ultimate. It's the fusion of the two principles of yin and yang. So you can see straight away that they both overlap into each other. So yin and yang are yin is the soft, feminine, yielding principle, and yang is the strong, masculine, forceful principle. And essentially they mutually flow into each other. So yin is always becoming yang, and yang is always becoming yin. So, and they are completely mutually dependent. They're equal but opposite. So there's a continual flow of exchange from one to the other. On top of that, you'll see that there's the little dots on each one. So you've got a little white dot and a little black dot in each of the opposite colours. And this is a very important principle as well, which is that yin contains a little bit of yang, and yang contains a little bit of yin, ad infinitum. Some of the really interesting diagrams have actually little Taiji spirals within Taiji spirals in the dots, because you can infinitely break down any principle, and there'll be a more yang bit and a more yin bit, and the balance might not be even, but each of those, and then each of those little bits you can break down further and further and further. So so you could say, well, why is this different to the cogs? We've got principles mutually interacting, but you could still say, look, here's yin, here's yang, we can analyse it. The key point is that they cannot be separated from each other. If you separate them out, they no longer become the yin and yang thing. They become something else, something that's dead and not part of the universe. Any individual component entirely relies on how it relates to everything else. If you looked at an example, if sort of Western scientist type-minded person looked at a lamp and said, what is this lamp? It's like, well, there's some engineering that people put together. It produces light, and it's a tool for me to read by. So he'd look at its function, the bits that make it up, and its use maybe. I think one of the key things is that also the words and concepts that you use to describe it can never be differentiated from it. The lamp is fundamentally connected to our thoughts and feelings about it. You can't separate these two issues. The language that we use to describe it, the thoughts that we use to define it, are in Western thought somehow separate. There's this sort of division of opinion, a separation of my thoughts from the rest of the world. When my thoughts arise from the world, they're completely dependent on it and flow back into it equally. When I do things, there is no separation. And I think the point that I like is that ecology is more like this. Ecology has this worldview, which is really interesting, and it's sort of stumbled on it all by itself, really, in the fact that ecology seeks dynamic connections between things, and it's the flows, it's the movements between the individual bits, between the fish and the algae that it eats. It's actually the flow in between the two that is the important part, rather than the individual components. And that is moving towards a more holistic worldview. It's the space between the gears is just as important as the gears themselves. Cool. So feel free to post up and let me know if you've got any
comments and feedback, and I hope that it's at least a little bit enlightening, maybe a little bit ranty. We'll see.